Sometimes I wonder if my father ever really saw me as his daughter, or just an investment. A safety net he could cash in when things got tough. If I had known what would happen, would I still have helped him? Maybe. Maybe not. But I do know one thing. I'll never let someone use me like that again. Growing up, my father, Henry Calloway, was larger than life. A self-made businessman, the proud owner of Calloway and Sons Manufacturing, a company that had been in our family for 3 generations. It was his pride and joy, more than his wife, more than his children, more than me. I learned young that love in our family wasn't unconditional. My father believed in one thing: results. You earn your place or you don't have one. My older brother, Damien, was the golden child, groomed to take over the company since birth. I was the backup plan, the one who had to be self-sufficient because business isn't a place for emotions. I remember being 10, sitting at the dinner table, listening to my father talk about how Damien was going to be the next great leader. I had piped up, eager to be included. "What about me, Dad?" He had chuckled, ruffling my hair absent-mindedly. "Sweetheart, you'll do just fine on your own. Women don't need to run companies. They marry into them." I had laughed along with everyone else, pretending the words didn't sting. By the time I was old enough to prove him wrong, I had no interest in Calloway and Sons. I built my own path, went to college on a scholarship, and carved out a career in financial consulting. And while my father barely acknowledged my success, Damien had it worse. He tried to live up to expectations, but the truth was he was reckless with money, and even worse with leadership. Calloway and Sons had been bleeding for years, but my father refused to see it, until it was too late. The call came on a cold December morning. "Daisy, we need to talk," my father said, his voice taut. No pleasantries, no, "How are you?" Just straight to business. "Come by the house, tonight." When I arrived, my father was already seated at the dining table, a folder full of documents spread in front of him. My mother sat silently beside him. Worry lines creased deep into her face. Damien was there too, swirling a glass of whiskey, his knee bouncing nervously. My father steepled his fingers, watching me. "The company is in trouble." I didn't say anything. I had suspected it for years. "I need your help," he continued. "You work in finance. You know how to fix things like this." I glanced at the papers, scanning the figures. Debt, declining revenue, mismanaged funds. It was worse than I expected. "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice even. He looked me in the eye. $2 million. I nearly laughed. $2 million? Dad, I don't have that kind of money. His jaw tightened. "But you have connections, investors, ways to restructure debt." Ah. So that was it. He didn't just want help. He wanted me to pull strings, risk my reputation, put my own finances on the line for a company that had never been mine, for a father who had never truly supported me. I should have said no, walked away. But despite everything, some small part of me wanted to prove my worth, to show him I wasn't just fine on my own. I was indispensable. So I agreed. Over the next 6 months, I threw myself into fixing Calloway and Sons. I brought in financial experts, negotiated with creditors, and convinced investors to give them another chance. I poured my time, my expertise, my resources into salvaging a company I had no stake in. And slowly it worked. The company stabilized, and by the end of the year, it was no longer on the brink of collapse. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an email from my father's lawyer, a revised will. I stared at the words, my stomach sinking. My father had rewritten his will to leave everything, to Damien. Not a single mention of me. I read it again. Sure, I had misunderstood. After everything I had done, he had still chosen Damien. He had still chosen to see me as nothing more than an outsider. I confronted him that same evening. I stormed into his study, throwing the papers onto his desk. "Explain this." He barely looked up. "It's how it should be." I clenched my fists. I saved your company, Dad. I put my name on the line. And you're telling me that doesn't matter? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Daisy, you'll be fine. You always are. But Damien, he needs this. He's the future of this company. I exhaled sharply, nodding to myself. All right, I said. Then let Damien figure it out from now on. And just like that, I walked out. I cut the money flow, severed ties, and for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to win his approval. A week later, my phone rang. I answered, expecting some sort of reconciliation. Instead, I was greeted with a sharp, impatient voice. Where the hell is my money? No hello, no thank you, no remorse. I smiled bitterly, gripping the phone tight. No hello, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Silence. Then he scoffed. Don't be dramatic, Daisy. You have an obligation to this family. I felt something inside me snap. An obligation? After being treated like I was expendable my entire life? I took a deep breath. No, Dad, I said calmly. I don't. And then I hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding in my chest. He was going to call back. He was going to send a message. He was going to realize what he had done and apologize. Any second now. The screen stayed dark. The silence stretched, filling the space around me like a heavy fog. For the first time in my life, my father needed something from me that I wasn't willing to give. And instead of apologizing, instead of trying to fix what he had broken, he had responded with entitlement. I had been a tool, not a daughter. And now that I refused to be used, he was furious. A slow, bitter laugh escaped my lips. I shouldn't have been surprised. And yet, some naive part of me had hoped that this time would be different. That night, I didn't sleep. Every few hours, I'd pick up my phone, half expecting another call. But my father was stubborn. If I wasn't going to cave immediately, he would wait. Let me stew in my own guilt before making his next move. I wasn't going to fall for it. The next morning, I walked into my office, my assistant immediately sensing something was off. Everything okay, Daisy? She asked hesitantly. I forced a smile. Yeah, just dealing with some family stuff. She nodded, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I had always been the one with the answers. The fixer, the dependable one. But for the first time, I wasn't fixing anything. I was letting it burn. By the end of the week, the emails started. At first, they were civil. From Henry Calloway. Subject: let's be reasonable. Daisy, I understand you're upset. But family is family. We don't turn our backs on each other. Call me. I deleted it. 2 days later, another one. From Henry Calloway. Subject: this is bigger than you. You're being short-sighted. You built your career in finance. You, of all people, should know that Calloway and Sons is a long-term investment. You helped save it. Why throw that away? Damien is struggling to handle things on his own. Come fix this before it's too late. Damien is struggling. Of course he was. I had seen it coming years ago. And yet, my father still thought I was the problem. This time, I responded. From Daisy Calloway. Subject: this is bigger than you. It's not my responsibility to clean up Damien's messes. It never was. I hit send before I could overthink it. A week later, my father showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant hesitantly knocked on the conference room door. Miss Calloway, your father is here. Every head in the room turned toward me. I kept my expression blank. Tell him I'm busy. He says it's urgent. Of course he did. Everything was urgent when it was about what he needed. I sighed, standing up. Give me 5 minutes. As I stepped out into the waiting area, I saw him pacing by the windows. He looked different, less put together than usual. His suit was still pressed, but the tie was loosened, and his hair, always carefully styled, looked slightly disheveled. He turned when he heard my heels click against the marble floor. Daisy, he started, forcing a smile. Good to see you. I crossed my arms. Is it? He exhaled through his nose, clearly trying to maintain patience. I didn't come here to fight. No? I tilted my head. You storm into my office unannounced after I've ignored all your emails, but you don't want to fight? He clenched his jaw. I just want to talk. I sighed. Fine, talk. He hesitated, as if this conversation wasn't going the way he had rehearsed it. Then, finally, he got to the point. The company is still in trouble. The investors are getting antsy. Damien is overwhelmed. I arched a brow. And? He looked at me like I was speaking another language. And we need you back. We. As if I was still part of this. As if I hadn't been erased from the will, pushed aside the moment my usefulness had expired. I let out a breathy chuckle. No. His expression hardened. No? That's right. Number his lips pressed into a thin line. Daisy, this isn't just about you. If the company collapses, it won't just be us who suffer. There are employees, families who depend on Calloway and Sons for their livelihoods. Are you really going to be this selfish? There it was. The guilt trip. The same tactic he had used my entire life. The same manipulation I had fallen for time and time again. But this time, it didn't work. I met his gaze, my voice steady. I already saved it once. That was my contribution. I owe you nothing. His face darkened. That company was built for Damien. You knew that. You always knew that. And yet he had still come crawling to me when Damien had failed. I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Then let Damien handle it. I turned on my heel, walking away. Daisy, I glanced over my shoulder. This conversation is over, Dad. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. I expected the next move to come quickly. My father never took no for an answer, and I had given it to him in the firmest way possible. But days passed. Then a week. Then 2. Silence. At first, I thought maybe he had finally understood. Maybe, for once, he had taken me at my word. I should have known better. Because when the next move came, it wasn't from him. It was from my mother. I was leaving work late, exhaustion pressing against my temples when my phone rang. Mom. I hesitated before answering. Unlike my father, she rarely called. She had always been the quiet observer, the neutral party, the woman who had let things happen rather than making them happen. I swiped to accept the call. Daisy, she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I sighed. Hi, Mom. Are you busy? I just left the office. There was a pause, like she was gathering courage. Can we talk? I leaned against my car, gripping the door handle. I already knew where this was going. Go ahead. She exhaled shakily, and for the first time in years, I thought she might actually be nervous. It's about your father, she said. And Damien. Of course it was. They're struggling, sweetheart. I know you and your father had words, but this isn't just about him. The company is hanging by a thread. Your brother is drowning. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Mom, Please, Daisy. Her voice cracked, and I froze. My mother had always been composed. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. If my father was the storm, she was the still water beneath it. And yet, I could hear the weight in her voice. The desperation. For a brief moment, guilt curled in my stomach. She continued before I could answer. Your father isn't doing well. He's not eating. He barely sleeps. She hesitated. I'm worried about him. I closed my eyes. Classic. My father hadn't called again because he had realized something. I was immune to him. But my mother? He knew I still saw something good in her. He knew I might bend for her, even when I wouldn't bend for him. And so, here she was, playing the part of the worried wife, the mediator, the one who could make things right if I just gave in. But this time, I saw through it. I swallowed back the guilt and steadied my voice. Mom, I love you, but I won't do this. She inhaled sharply. Daisy. No, I said, firmer now. This is the pattern, isn't it? He burns everything to the ground and you clean up the ashes. You beg, you smooth things over, and he gets away with it. Again and again. Silence. I pressed on. I refused to be part of it anymore. I saved that company once. I saved him once, and he repaid me by cutting me out like I never mattered. He made his choice. Her voice was barely a whisper. Daisy, it's not that simple. It is, I said. For once, it is. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel. You want to save him, Mom? Then let Damien do it. That's who he chose. That's who he bet everything on. She exhaled slowly, and I knew she understood. But understanding wasn't the same as acceptance. I just don't want to lose my daughter over this, she said finally. A lump formed in my throat. You won't, I promised. But I won't lose myself over this either. I ended the call before she could say anything else. The next morning, I woke up to a headline. Callaway and Sons. Third-generation business at risk as family dispute unfolds. I blinked, rereading the words. What the hell? I sat up, scrolling through the article. Anonymous sources claimed that internal family conflict was jeopardizing the company's future. That a former family member had walked away at a critical time, leaving the company and its employees in turmoil. And though they never named me, it was obvious who they were talking about. I barely had time to process it before my phone exploded with messages. From an old college friend. Daisy, is this article about you? From a former client. Hope you're okay. Let me know if you need to get ahead of this. From my assistant. Do you want me to start screening calls? I was still staring at my phone when a text popped up from Damien. Damien. You should have just helped, Daisy. Rage flooded my veins. This wasn't just a news leak. This was a calculated attack. A public smear campaign to pressure me into bending. My father had played his last card. And that's when I knew. He had lost. Because I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't the little girl at the dinner table, desperate to be seen. I wasn't the fixer, the safety net, the silent daughter in the shadows. I was done. I typed out a single response to Damien. Me. Tell Dad that if he wants to drag me through the mud, he better be prepared for the consequences. I hit send. I expected the fallout from my text to be immediate. My father was the kind of man who couldn't stomach being challenged, let alone being threatened. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of his wrath. I was ready for it. The next morning, I sat in my office, sipping coffee as I scrolled through the latest financial reports for a client. A sense of eerie calm had settled over me. Then my assistant knocked. She looked hesitant, like she was debating whether or not to even speak. Daisy, your mother is here. I stiffened. My mother never showed up unannounced. I set my coffee down and exhaled slowly. Send her in. A moment later, she stepped inside, looking as though she hadn't slept in days. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she was clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. Mom, I said evenly, this is a surprise. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood in front of my desk, wringing her hands. Daisy, she started, then stopped. Her voice wavered. Your father, he's furious. I almost laughed. When is he not furious? This time is different, she insisted. He's talking to lawyers. He wants to sue you. I blinked. Sue me? I repeated, incredulous. For what? For not giving him my money? Is that illegal now? She swallowed. He thinks you misled the investors, that you sabotaged the company by walking away. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Mom, I didn't sabotage anything. I saved that company. And when I left, everything was stable. The fact that it's collapsing now, that's on Damien. That's on Dad. I know, she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. I know that, sweetheart. Then why are you here? I didn't say it out loud. I already knew the answer. She wasn't here because she agreed with my father. She was here because she was scared of him. I need you to make this right, she pleaded. If he goes through with this, it could ruin you. Even if you win, the damage to your reputation. I cut her off. He already tried to ruin me, I said coldly, gesturing toward my phone, where the article about Calloway and Sons was still open. He already dragged my name through the mud. And now that it didn't work, he wants to play legal games? I leaned forward. I won't be bullied, Mom. Not by him. Not by anyone. She sat down then, like her legs had finally given out. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I sighed, rubbing my temples. My mother had always been passive, always standing in my father's shadow, making excuses, keeping the peace. I didn't want to be like her. I refused to be like her. You have two choices, Mom, I said gently. You can keep defending him. Keep throwing yourself between him and reality. Keep letting him walk all over you. I let that sink in before I continued. Or you can walk away, like I did. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know how. And that was the difference between us. I had figured it out. I had broken free. And she never would. I love you, Mom, I said softly, but I won't fix this for him. She looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Then she stood, wiped her tears, and without another word, walked out. The lawsuit never came. It was an empty threat, just like I suspected. But my father wasn't finished. A few days later, I got an alert from my bank. A fraud warning. Someone had tried to access my accounts. I immediately called my bank, my pulse spiking. Miss Calloway, we flagged multiple attempts to access your accounts from an unfamiliar device, the representative explained. We've locked everything down for now, but we recommend you check your security settings. I already knew who it was. My father. I should have been furious, but instead I just felt exhausted. He had no power over me, so he was grasping at anything he could find. I spent the next hour changing every password, setting up extra layers of security, and freezing all access to my financial records. And then, for good measure, I texted Damien. Me. Tell Dad if he ever tries to touch my money again, I will press charges. It took him a full 30 minutes to respond. Damien. I didn't know he would do that. I scoffed. Liar. Me. You did. And you let him. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. Because Damien wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn, as he always had been. A week later, I got another call from my mother. But this time, she wasn't begging. She was panicking. Daisy, she gasped, her voice shaking. It's your father. He collapsed. For a moment, the world around me stilled. I gripped my phone. What? They rushed him to the hospital. His heart... Her voice broke. They're not sure if he's going to make it. I swallowed, my throat tight. I should have felt something. Pain, fear, regret. But all I felt was numb, because even now, even with this, I knew what she was really asking. Come home. Come back. Fix it. I exhaled. Keep me updated, I said. Let me know what the doctors say. She let out a shaky breath. Are you coming? I closed my eyes. No, Mom. The moment I hung up, I expected to feel something. Guilt, sadness, even relief. But there was nothing. Just silence. For years, my father had loomed over my life, a force too powerful to ignore. Every decision I made, every sacrifice, every late night spent fixing his mistakes, it had all been to prove myself to a man who never saw me as anything more than a tool. And now? Now he was lying in a hospital bed, and I couldn't bring myself to care the way I thought I should. I wasn't heartless. I was just empty. 3 days passed. 3 days of missed calls from my mother. 3 days of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 days of Damien saying nothing at all. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed again. Mom, he's stable, but weak. The doctor said it was a warning sign. He needs to make major lifestyle changes. Maybe this will be the wake-up call he needs. I stared at the screen. A wake-up call? She still believed in that? That my father, the man who had been manipulating, scheming, and controlling people his entire life, would suddenly change just because his body had finally caught up with his karma? I didn't reply. The next message came later that evening. Mom, he's asking for you. I let out a breath, rubbing my temples. Of course he was. Not because he had changed, not because he was sorry, but because he needed something. I typed back the only answer I could give. No. I didn't expect a response. But after a long pause, the typing bubbles appeared. Mom, I understand. Just think about it, Daisy. I wouldn't. A week later, I saw the news. Callaway and Sons was collapsing. For real this time. The article painted a clear picture. An empire in free fall. Investors pulling out. Employees being let go. Debt piling up. Damien had failed. And my father was too weak to fix it. I expected Damien to call. To beg. To try one last time to pull me back in. But the only message I got from him was a short, bitter text. Damien, you got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. Me. No, Damien. I got what I deserved. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The morning after Damien's text, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not relief. Not victory. Just peace. For the first time, there were no fires to put out. No urgent calls, no manipulative pleas, no threats looming over me. Callaway and Sons was sinking, but it wasn't my problem. My father was recovering, but I didn't have to be part of it. Damien was dealing with the wreckage, but I felt no obligation to clean up after him. For once, my life was mine alone. 1 week later, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but I didn't. Mom, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated. Your father is home. I said nothing. He's different, she added quickly. Quieter. He hasn't said much since he got back from the hospital. I still said nothing. I think he wants to see you, she said, voice uncertain. But he won't ask. I let out a slow breath. And you want to know if I will? Silence. Then, softly, she said, Would you? Would I? Would I walk back into that house, sit in front of the man who had erased me from his legacy, who had only seen me as an asset to be used and discarded? Would I give him one last chance? I closed my eyes. And then I made my final choice. No, Mom, I won't. A shaky breath on the other end. I thought you might say that. I swallowed. Are you going to stay? She didn't answer right away. Then, just above a whisper, she admitted, I don't know how to leave. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Then that's your choice to make, I told her, just like I made mine. I heard her inhale sharply, as if she wanted to say something else, but she didn't. She just whispered, I love you, Daisy. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. I love you too, Mom, I said. Then I hung up, and that was the last time I ever spoke to her. A month later, I stood outside my new home, a place with no history, no painful memories, no ghosts of a childhood spent begging for scraps of affection. It was small, but mine. As I sipped my coffee on the porch, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Whoever it was, my mother, my father, Damien, one of their enablers, they weren't part of my life anymore. I had cut the cord, and I would never go back. With a final glance at the phone, I hit block. And then, smiling to myself, I went back inside. I had won. Not the way they thought winning worked. Through money, power, control, but in the only way that truly mattered. I had my freedom. And nothing, not my father's empire, not my family's expectations, not the weight of the past, could take that away from me ever again.